So today we're going to cover the ultimate guide to MSL interviews, everything you need to know to ace that next MSL interview. So in this video, I'm going to share with you everything you need to know about how you're going to ace that next MSL interview. And I have a bunch of things lined up, a lot of my insider tips and secrets from my experience of working in the pharmaceutical industry. I used to be a medical science liaison. I also built medical science liaison teams and headed up medical affairs organizations. So really have the insider scoop as to what happens in the pharma industry. So let's get started. So the first thing that people overlook often when they're going to get ready for an interview is reading the company's press release and their investor pages. So why is that important? Because when you're going to meet with a company, you want to know what are the latest things that have occurred, the latest news for that company that's relevant to investors. It's going to be important if it's relevant to investors. And you want to know, for example, did they just release new data? Did they just acquire a company? Did they just, announce the hiring of a new executive? So these types of things would all be found in the press release. And so when you go to the interview, you can reference those things that you found when you were doing the research. So you walk in and you say, congratulations on your recent phase 3 study. The results were really impressive, and it's exciting to be able to offer this new therapy for XYZ therapeutic area. They love stuff like that because it shows that you've really done your due diligence and you're also committed and understand that this is all ultimately about the patient, which it is. The second thing is look at the CME, non-promotional programs the company has sponsored for a particular therapeutic area that you're applying for. So for example, if you're applying for an immunology, let's say MSL or medical science liaison position, you want to see for that particular drug or that particular therapeutic area, what CME programs is the company sponsored. Now, for those of you that don't know, CME stands for Continuing Medical Education. Remember that pharma companies, they a lot of times will support or sponsor CME programs for physicians. They're non-promotional, or physicians attend and they get CE credits they use to maintain their licensure. So this is really important because if you know what they're sponsoring, then you understand how they want to message or position certain things. Now, keep in mind that CME programs are hands-off for pharmaceutical companies, meaning that the CME company who develops the content, they have to go to the pharmaceutical company and say, look, we have an idea for an educational program. We're submitting it to you. And then the pharma company reviews it and says, yes, we approve. We'll give the money for that program, or we don't approve it. But they're technically not supposed to have any input into the content that you can use to develop that CE program. So it's an independent medical education grant that they provide, and they're independently doing this, and they're not providing any influence over the content. However, the CE companies are very savvy, and they know how they should be presenting and positioning the disease state of the product. So listening to those CE programs online, a lot of times they're available online virtually, and signing up for just, watching them will teach you a lot, not just about which key opinion leaders that company values or the key opinion leaders that are very influential for that area. We call them now external experts too, sometimes EEs, but it teaches you everything from how to pronounce the drug to maybe other competitors that are being used to treat that particular therapeutic area, to, for example, understanding how you would go about talking about the disease state, the epidemiology, symptoms for that, again, particular disease, treatment options, guidelines, things like that. So I always recommend looking at the CE. Number 3, read the PI. So the PI, if you don't know, you should know, but if you don't know, the PI is the prescribing information or the package insert. It is ultimately the label for the drug. We call it the label. Anything that's on label is in the label. Anything that's off label is not on the label. Not very creative, but that's kind of how it works. And why do you want to do that? Because in the prescribing information or the package insert, there's going to be a lot of important details. For example, what the drug is indicated for, how the drug is dosed, any major adverse events, all the major studies that were used by the company when the regulatory affairs team filed with the regulatory agency in the United States. That's, of course, the Food and Drug Administration, or the FDA. If you were in Europe, it would be the European Medicines Agency. So depending on where you're located, obviously there's different regulatory agencies. So, but looking at the PI gives you a lot of details. It also becomes a great talking point, right? And actually be many talking points when you're asking questions. You could say something like, I noticed that the drug is dosed BID. Have you noticed any adherence issues or compliance issues by patients because it's dosed BID, for example? Right. So again, it just shows that you've went above and beyond and you've really, really looked deeply into this particular drug or disease state. Number 4, review the drug's competitors and understand the similarities and differences. So again, understanding for a particular disease state, what are the competitors in that area? Is this drug the first in class product for that particular disease state, or is it the third one that's been out? And if it is the third one, what are the other 2 drugs in the class? And again, that can be a very good talking point, asking a question, how does this particular product fare in the market? What do a lot of the key opinion leaders say as it relates to our product in comparison to the others? So again, understanding the competitor is very, very, very important. Number 5, and these are more boilerplate kind of pieces of advice, is reviewing the interviewer's background and looking at their LinkedIn and looking for commonalities that you have. So, you're meeting with someone, so let's say I went to Columbia University. I might say to someone, oh, you went to Columbia University too. I noticed, what years were you there? What did you study? And we might talk about that. And that point of commonality is really, really important because it shows, again, that you've done your homework. It shows that you've prepared, that you've been very, very diligent in making sure that you understand who you're meeting with. Now, look, the other things are obvious. Obviously, dressing well. You should always wear a suit if possible, if you're a man. And, for women, again, wearing a business suit, I think is key. You don't want your outfit to stick out, of course, and that you can get that from other videos. Again, my focus really here is on MSLs and MSL interviewing. One of the most important questions that I will say when it comes to interviewing for the MSL role, and probably any position, is the tell me about yourself question. And that is a question that you're typically going to get as your first question. It's like, it's great to meet you. Tell me about yourself, Will. And they really are looking to see how well you articulate yourself, how well you communicate to others. Do you make good eye contact? Are you dynamic in your tone? Are you able to tell a story? Because a lot of being an effective medical science liaison is being able to be very good at scientific storytelling. So that's really, really important. All right. Well, look, if you found this content useful, make sure you give us a thumbs up and like it and comment below. Let us know what other types of topics you're interested in hearing about as it relates to all things pharma, healthcare, and of course, the medical affairs MSL world. All right, guys, I'll talk to you soon.